Hello everyone. So now that we've done the block out, we've added more details, we're going to start to model the bottom section of this jaw here. So it will be a separate model. So here within the subtools, so if you were in geometry before, just select subtool. We need to select the append option, and then we're going to append a new sphere. So I'm going to go to the move tool and just scale this down, making sure that the sphere is selected. Let's just scale this down and move this below the skull. Let's move my reference over just a little bit. And I'm going to just move this to where the jawline is. Okay. I'm also going to select this transparency button just so I can see through and into my skull. And then I'm going to go back to my draw. So I'm going to select the move tool. And I'm going to move this to just where that jawline is. I might actually move the move tool down just a little bit. Back to draw. Oh, okay. So as you'll notice, every time I move this, it's not actually going to add any symmetry. So I'm just going to undo all of that. Go back to move, bring this down. So any new object that you append isn't going to have the symmetry. You can go into transform, add the symmetry that way, or we've got this nice and easy shortcut, activate symmetry, and do it that way. So let's drag this down. I'm just going to start to form the shape of this jaw. Okay, so let's push this up. And then Redynamesh as you go along. In fact, what are we on? Let's go to geometry, and we're currently set to 128. Let's maybe just do 80, and then Redynamesh. It's going to be a little bit easier just to push and pull this jaw. There we go. Let's push this out. Redynamesh. Okay, so I'm just using the move tool, get that basic shape, Redynamesh when you need to. So every time you push out a large section, just Redynamesh. In fact, Dynamesh was off, so let's do that again. There we go. Okay, so it's always good just to go back to multiple references just to make sure that everything is lined up. So it looks like this actually comes back just a little bit more. I'm going to use that move tool just to move this down slightly, and then back to draw, and then push this jaw back up. Looks a little bit better. Okay, so there's the basic blocking. This jaw actually comes all the way down. Let's just use this move tool. Keep moving it up. Hold control. Left click drag to Redynamesh. Keep doing that. So we can see here on the bottom view, then that's the effect that we want. So let's just go back to this view, turn it upside down. Let's try and match that there. So I need to just move this down a little bit. This is going to be much thinner. It's also going to come out just a little bit more, like so. And then Redynamesh and smooth. Okay. So that looks pretty good, just about there. Let's just move this down slightly. That looks about right to me. Need to make sure this isn't clipping into the model. In this case it is. So we need to just make sure. So here this needs to be brought out a little bit more. And that looks pretty good to me. Right, so sometimes you gotta just concentrate on what you're doing and slow down and very slowly start to push and pull this model. Right, I think that should just about do it now. Let's just go back to this reference. Okay. It needs to be just a little bit straighter there. Let's pull this out. That's a bit better. There we go. Okay, excellent. So there's our base shape. So take your time with that. You need to go back to this bottom view, pull this in, Redynamesh, and then also on the inside as well, make sure that's nice and smooth and comes out right down to the front section of the teeth. Also making sure that the jawline isn't clipping through into the model. And I've set that resolution to 80 in the Dynamesh. So now we can start to increase this. So I'll set this to about 120 and Redynamesh. And now we've got a little bit more polygons to work with. So let's just push this in. Let's try and make this just a little bit more circular. And that's looking all right. Okay, so next step. Let's start to add the teeth. Let's have a look. So to create those teeth, I'm going to select the eye icon on the skull, just so I can see the bottom side of this jaw. And I might need to make just some slight adjustments here. So I'm going to go back to my move tool. If you're struggling to move this, you need to hold Control and left click and drag just to move this tray in case you've forgotten. And let's bring this out slightly. It looks a little bit better. Okay, and let's increase the resolution a little bit more. In this case, I'm going to bump this up to about 200 and then Redynamesh. That's looking a bit better. Right, so let's add the teeth. So where are they? So we've got this one here. So I'm going to hold Control, left click and drag. So I'm on the standard brush here. And we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. So let's just make these two front ones a little bit smaller. And let's just make this one a little bit bigger. So here we go. Hold Control, left click to invert that selection. And then I'll move upwards. That's it. Move the gizmo up. And then we'll hold left click, drag away from the model. Do that twice to Redynamesh. We'll go back to Damien standard. And we'll just slowly start chipping away at these teeth. So we're still very low res at the moment. We're just blocking in these shapes. There we go. That's looking all right. And then we'll need to use the snake hook tool to pull up this section here, but I first need to turn on the skull to do that. So just so I'm lining up these teeth properly, I'm going to go back to my subtool and turn on my skull. And now that I can see through my skull, I'm going to think about where these teeth are going to be. So they're actually meeting at the same point. So I might need to change the position that the bottom jaw is in. So let's have a look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 again. And they're pretty much all within the same area. They're not too spaced out. So 3, 4, 5, and 6. Does that match up? That looks okay to me. So let's invert again. Go to the move tool and move this up. And I might even just rotate this down slightly. That looks okay to me. Maybe move it to the side. Okay, because this whole jaw will actually need to be moved. So let's just move this jaw over slightly. And let's move it up and rotate it. Okay, so these teeth need to join here. This fang is going to come up, out, and away from the top part of the skull. And then these teeth are actually going to be joined. So let's move this so we can actually see that we need to make some changes to the top part of that skull there. So I'm going to turn this off, go back to this skull, and they're not going to come down so much. They actually need to come out slightly. So let's go. Let's just have a look at my reference just in case. So I'm going to use that move tool and just move these teeth out slightly. That's more like it. And then I'll go back into my jaw and let's see how that now lines up. So it's looking a little bit better. I think now I need to use that move tool on the jaw and just move this out slightly. Try and get this to match. Okay, we're getting somewhere now. Let's have a look. I don't want to smooth too much out. Let's Redynamesh. Can always fix those teeth later. Move that back, and that's looking all right. Okay, so now that I've moved that into place, that's looking pretty good. I'm going to go back into my geometry and I'm going to increase the resolution of this jaw. I think I'm going to increase it to about 230. So that was similar to the skull, so 230 there. Redynamesh, and now I'm going to go back into that Damien standard brush and just start to sculpt out some of these teeth. Okay, so I'm just marking a line there where the teeth are. That's a bit better. So let me just see, what did I add this Dynamesh to? Geometry, I did 240, so let's just keep it consistent. Let's go to the jaw, geometry, let's set this to 240, Redynamesh, and then I can divide it when I want to add a little bit more detail. So I'm going to continue using that Damien standard, and I need to use that snake hook tool just to push that teeth, fang outwards. So let's just select that fang and move this up. Let's try and find a better reference image. I think this one looks a bit better. There we go. So we can see that that tooth actually from the skull needs to come out just a little bit more. Let's have a look. That's a bit better. Back to the jaw. There we go. So just make sure it's not clipping anywhere. I'm just going to move this down a little bit. That looks okay. And now I'm going to go back to that Damien standard. Smooth it out. Right, so let's go back into geometry and then divide the mesh. And now we've got a little bit more of a poly count to work with. So, I'm still on snake hook. Let's go back to Damien standard. And let's just cut into these a little bit more. And I'm going to go and turn the skull off because I want to go into the inside and sculpt into this. And I also want to use that trim, trim dynamic brush. So let's just go onto trim dynamic and just start to flatten out these teeth here. They're not going to be as rounded. There we go. So we've got a slight indent. We can also do the same on the outside as well. So here I'm just using the H polish just to polish the insides. It could look a little bit more realistic. There we go. It's looking pretty cool. Let's just polish this side. Excellent. Yeah, you can just keep adding more detail if you want to. For now, I'm just going to get this blocked in so we can move on to the next stage. So let's have a look at this section. I'm going to continue using that H polish just to slowly chip away at it. And I'm going to go back to my standard brush, turn the intensity down to 10. In fact, let's try 16. That looks a little bit better. Just add a little bit more detail there underneath the teeth. Ooh, let's not use that. So all of this looks a little bit too rounded, so I'm just going to use that Damian standard just to make a slightly harder edge there. Looks a little bit better. So I'm using a mixture of add and subtract. So it's going to subtract it, and then I'm going to add it just to bring it back out. That's looking pretty good. And let's see what it looks like with the skull. I'm going to turn the transparency back off, and that looks pretty good. Not too shabby. Right, so let's just continue sculpting into this jawline just a little bit more. Let's add some more details. Again, it's a little bit too smooth there, so I'm just going to make it look a little bit more angular, make it look like bone. There we go. Very nice. And that should just about do it for this stage. So we've done the blocking, we've modeled the jaw, and now we can move on to adding the skin. So I'm just going to save this, so file and save as. So let's go, I saved it on the desktop. Yes, let's replace it. And you can actually go through, as I've explained in the intro video, you can actually go through your history here and go all the way back to the beginning. So we can move this slider all the way back, and we can see where I've started to model this jaw. So we started with the blocking, pushed and pulled with the move tool, we've increased the Redynamesh polygon count, and then the exact same techniques with the skull using the Damian standard brush and the trim dynamic. Okay. So I hope you enjoyed that, and take your time with this. Model the skull, make sure it's correct first before we start adding the skin, because if the proportions are way off, then the model with the skin will look very strange. So take your time, and I will see you in the next video. Okay, take care. Goodbye.